Hey everybody, it's March 15th, and I thought I'd go ahead and drop another update on the situation in Ukraine and just give a couple of my thoughts on that. I know I still owe some episodes on the reason why I think NATO might be doomed, and I'm definitely going to work on that. It's just taking me a little longer to get my thoughts organized on that. It's kind of a complex thing. It's going to take a lot of background, I think. So I keep kind of punting on that one. Keep trying to ice the puck, as it were. Um, with regard to Ukraine today, I wanted to start by talking about Odessa. This has been the main point of interest for me in just as an observer and studying the situation. I've been concerned with how the Russians were going to use their naval infantry troops. And we originally talked about the possibility of landing them at Odessa, but I kind of rejected that. I really didn't think they were going to. And the main reason for that was that landing was going to be opposed. And I really didn't see the Russians risking any of their big assets, their big LSTs, what they call the BDK. Um, those ships are just giant targets, and if the Ukrainians have defenses in place, it just seems very risky for the Russians to move those ships and actually use them in an amphibious operation. So I've been saying for the whole time that I just don't think they're going to try to land in Odessa. And now, as well, a couple of things. One, I said that before they could invade at Odessa, they would really need a pretty big bombardment to just make sure that they could take out any of the known locations of the Ukrainian anti-ship cruise missiles, the Neptune missiles that they created. And I thought that they would definitely have to do mine clearing operations before they could even think about bringing those big ships in. And so earlier today, there was a bombardment. It was a cruise missile attack. I couldn't really tell if it would. I wouldn't have. It didn't seem like a very large one. I didn't have a lot of good, solid reporting on it. It seemed like a kind of a medium attack. So if they had good intelligence, which I think is questionable, then it's possible that they could have taken out what they think the Ukrainians have waiting for them. Separate reports indicated that there were minesweeping activities going on. And so, with those two things coming into play, it feels like there really could be an operation going on. I would guess that it's going to be south of Odessa uh, and just far enough away that they can get basically a kind of an isolated location. But even then, let's say they did take out all the Neptune missiles. Let's say they did were able to clear out all of the mines. I was really wondering how on earth the Russians planned on supplying this force when they do drop them off. And there are only two things I can think of. One is perhaps they are going to resupply via Sevastopol and using those BDKs to move supplies in. That seems wildly dangerous. It seems like every time you bring those ships in, you're risking losing them, and I don't know if that value is really going to be there. So the only other thing I can think of is that perhaps the Russians are advancing enough around the outskirts of Odessa, which I haven't seen any evidence of, but that perhaps they think that they're going to be able to link up relatively quickly. Now, I've seen no indication that that's something that could happen, so it still just makes me wonder how do they plan on resupplying those troops? Because they can't just drop them off and then say, "See ya, good luck, Ivan." Um, that would be that would be madness. And even though we've seen some questionable maneuvers out there, from the beginning of this whole episode, it just seems like that would be way too reckless. I could be totally wrong. They could surprise me. But I'm curious, and how do you guys think that they might be able to get supplies into a remote amphibious force south of Odessa? I'd be really interested in hearing that. I think the other thing that's really been in the news a lot lately is the concept of throwing up a no-fly zone over Western Ukraine, all of Ukraine. I saw that today Estonia's parliament formally requested establishing a no-fly zone, and it hurts my head to think that people are actually calling for this. I see no way that declaring a no-fly zone, that NATO declaring a no-fly zone and enforcing it doesn't lead to direct kinetic warfare with Russia, and I don't see any way that conflict between Russia and NATO doesn't escalate almost immediately to at least battlefield nukes. I just I don't see it. Russia's not going to back down because we start shooting down their airplanes. That's not how they're wired. We wouldn't. If they told us that we couldn't fly, well, hell, they could tell us we couldn't fly over Bermuda and watch us. And if you try to stop us, then there's going to be a fight. There's just no two ways about it. I, the only thing I can think is that people that are calling for this truly believe that the Russians will back down. Um, I'd like to see their evidence for that. And I think that risking nuclear war with Russia is what's really on the table, and that's not an idle threat. They definitely don't see this the way I see it. I think the use of nuclear weapons is just abhorrent. It's madness. But I'm not, I'm not in charge of their arsenal, and I believe that 100% that happens, and that can escalate. Now, I also think that that could be the beginning of the end of the conflict if there's a nuclear exchange, and everybody might have a chance to step back. But my God, wow, think about that. The thing that stops this humanitarian disaster is a nuclear exchange. It's pure madness. And my friends ask me, well, what are you willing to watch? What level of atrocity has to happen before you're willing to step in? And I I know this is an unpopular answer, but I don't see anything that would convince me that it was time to go to war with Russia. I'm sorry that Ukraine is on the wrong side of the line. I'm sorry that they're not a member of NATO and that they're really paying the price for this. Uh, but and it again, if it's a NATO member, it's a totally different equation. Now once there's a declaration of war, if the Russians came over and hit Poland or something like that, well, now we've got a new question because they are a member of NATO. But up to and until a NATO member is involved, we really can't get involved like that. Essentially, it comes down to we cannot be the person who shoots first. So in the no-fly zone, the only way that works is if one, uh, the Russians either obey it, which I'm telling you, there's a 0% chance of that, or two, we shoot first. I mean, what are we going to get lucky and maybe the Russians will shoot one of our airplanes down first? That doesn't sound like very good luck, but that's it. Either we're shooting first or we're not going to enforce this thing. So think about that. I think when you're asking for a no-fly zone, um, and just consider those consequences because I don't see a way that we can back this thing up once we dedicate to engaging the Russian military directly. And once it starts going forward, I do not see us being able to stop the train in time to prevent an absolute catastrophe worse than what we're seeing, worse than what the Russians could possibly do in Ukraine. Let's not forget, I mean, I get it. I understand. Just read a little bit about the Soviet occupation of Ukraine, read about the Holodomor, and it's awful. It's absolutely awful. And I don't think that's going to happen again. Uh, the world has to watch this time. The press has to actually report it if it did happen. But we just we can't get involved directly, and I don't see anything changing my mind on that point. Well, I think that hopefully in 2 weeks we won't have a conversation about this because there won't be a war going on in Ukraine. We can hopefully talk about the peace process. We can hopefully talk about the amazing successes that the Ukrainians have had. I still hold by. I think that Ukraine's still going to get a lot smaller. I think that Zelensky offering to cough up the Donbass and to agree not to join NATO is definitely a step in the direction of getting this thing resolved. Sucks for Ukraine. It's not fair. It's not right, but it is real, and hopefully the two sides can make an agreement that while it sucks, it stops the fighting. And so hopefully I won't be talking to you in a couple of weeks. Thanks.